Hey everyone, and Sam, thanks for having me. This is awesome. Glad I got to see you out at SnooSec a few weeks ago too. And yeah, thanks GreyNoise for having me. Love what you guys do. So, hey everyone, I'm Matt Johansson. I My day job, I'm the head of software security for a little website called Reddit. And my nights and weekends, I spend a lot of time working on creating a lot of my own content, especially around this brand that I created called Vulnerable You. And it's a bit of the intersection between cybersecurity and mental health is how I launched it. So if those of you who know Brene Brown, oh yeah, let me put this up. So if you know Brene Brown, or if you don't, Brene is a prominent author and public speaker and talks a lot about mental health and things like this. And one of her core topics, she says, is the power of vulnerability. And she calls herself a vulnerability researcher. And I always heard that and said, hey, wait a second, me too. Um, but very different types, right? And so I always liked the clash of those words, and so I decided to lean into it. So um, did the good security guy thing and made a QR code because everyone loves QR codes in security, for where you guys can find me. I do have chat. I can see chat. So Sam, I know you're probably looking, but I've got a big enough monitor. I've got everything up. So if you guys, feel free to interject as I go. No need to wait to the end on this one. It's more of a conversational talk, obviously, less technical than usual stuff that I'm generally talking about. But yeah, a little bit more about me and my life in security, so you know where I'm coming from. I started as a pen tester type way too many years ago, doing all sorts of pen test consulting, and then I went to a company called White Hat Security, and I was a web app pen tester there, and wound up building out their threat research center down in Houston. So wound up hiring, training about 65 web app pen testers working on DAST and SAST type stuff, really just finding all the AppSec type bugs across like 30,000 websites that we were looking at. So that was a really cool job. And then I went and I was the head of security for a fintech company called Honest Dollar that got bought by Goldman Sachs. So got the trial by fire into big finance. And then I was running all cloud and container security for Bank of America. And then wound up running all vulnerability management, all vuln identification and remediation for Bank of America. So that's kind of my past. And now at Reddit, I once again kind of come full circle and own AppSec at Reddit, and I own our bug bounty program. I know a bunch, Sam and a bunch of people probably listening are bug crowd, Illuminati or whatever. And yeah, so back to my AppSec roots and stuff like that, just so you know who you're talking to. So uh, talking a little bit more about vulnerability and why this kind of jumps out at me. First of all, it's a word that we're all super familiar with in security, right? And it's also a word that tends to seem very bad in security, right? It's like, oh, we have vulnerabilities. We need to fix them right now, right? Or we need to identify, like I just said in my own career path, I owned all vulnerability management and remediation for a bank. Like I had a team of like dozens of people just identifying and then fixing vulnerabilities, right? And so I think it's an interesting thought experiment for us in our career to think about vulnerability as something that could also be a strength and something that we can lean on, right? And so this is something I'm trying to practice it with myself, right? Is to lead with vulnerability and talk about a lot of these things more publicly. I like this both in, obviously, we're going to talk about mental health and things like that today, but I do like this truly in the technical sense of cybersecurity as well, is us just talking about things that we struggle with publicly just helps us all so much, right? I don't know how, I mean, what we're doing right here is awesome, right? Like these little community events are where I've built my entire career, where I've met so many people, and where I've learned so much. I've got tons of Slack channels that I sit in that are Discords that I sit in that are more like the back room. I know, Sam, you called it the hallway con, right? The hallway track. The hallway track of every conference I've ever gone to is the only reason I go to those conferences, right? Talks are cool, but the hallway track is just like magic. It's where you really connect with people. And so I do truly like leading with vulnerability in the technical sense too, right? Is like, hey, I'm struggling with blah blah blah. This at my organization, man, I can't get budget to spin up a new AppSec thing, or like man, our bug bounty triage is just sucking the life out of my team, or whatever it is. If you talk about that publicly instead of like hiding behind like the scary PR teams and NDAs that our industry is just steeped with, we wind up all learning a whole lot, and we also can like navigate this whole thing a lot better, right? I also really like this quote from Glennon Doyle. I read her book. If you don't know Glennon, she's awesome too, and speaks a lot about this. And I really liked how she put like how depression and anxiety feels to her, and that other people still see her, but she can't really feel anything, right? And I think that this is something that I also want to talk about a lot today. Is like a lot of people that you see in the industry, CISOs or content creators or anyone who's on stage and seems like they've got their shit all together, I guarantee you they don't, right? I know a lot of these people personally, and they've all got their own struggles. We all do, right? And so that's what we're here to talk about. So real quick, we're going to talk a little bit about just any data that I've collected over the years, and a few people have done studies and reports about our industry, or even just like the tech industry a little bit more broadly. It was easier to find data on, and what is kind of specifically challenges our industry in the mental health field. And then, of course, I use all the terminology that we're all super familiar with, right? What are the threats and vulnerabilities to our own mental health that we should talk about? And then I also really like leaning on terminology of like incident response. I don't know how many people here work in like IR, DFIR, or like a SOC or something like that, but I kind of lean on some of those things because, of course, I do. And then community. That's what we're doing here today, right? I mean, Sam, I think community is in your job title, right? So like that's what we're doing. Obviously, there's power in it. There's power in it, and more than just this, right? More than just like helping startups get their name out there. It's more about like everything. Community is like we're social creatures, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about that too. So let's get into evidence, right? So there's actually a brand new book that came out like last week or the week before, but Jonathan Haidt's a really cool author. If you guys haven't read his books, go look at a few of them. And he just dropped a book called The Anxious Generation. It talks a lot about data about how if you look at mental health in young adults now, especially in young women, how drastically the stats have changed. And if you correlate it all back, it's like right to the launch of social media and smartphones, and just the prevalence of that in specifically like right around puberty people, right? It's like a lot of us that like I'm an elder millennial. Sam, I think we're of similar generations because we both like Blink-182. So I think that, yeah, it's kind of like we were probably in high school around the same time.
Yeah.
And so, but so like we were kind of like, I don't know, for me, I didn't get like I didn't get a smartphone until after college, right? I'm for me. So like we had like the Nokia bricks that you could literally like survive a nuclear fallout, and I could play Snake on it, but those weren't doing complete warfare on my mental health. Right. But this book talks a lot about how like, hey, we put like the whole social stigma aspect of life like right into the pocket of like a prepubescent person like trying to figure out how to navigate life, and like what that's created. Right. So if you're really interested in this topic, definitely go check this out. But there has been some other studies done specifically on our industry, right? And I don't mean to be the guy that gets up here and is like phone bad, social media bad, right? I literally am on Twitter constantly as like part of my job. And that's what I really want to talk about is like, I'm not coming up here and being like, hey guys, like, let's all become monks and turn your phones off and social media evil. It's not realistic in 2024, right? Especially in our industry. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? Is a lot of the career that we've chosen is the antithetical to a lot of the advice that you're going to get on how to like unplug and like, refresh and recharge and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, then I'm falling behind, right? If I'm not staying on top of it, I'm falling behind. And so that's a huge part of what we're going to talk about today. The other bit is, and this is kind of why I've liked creating this brand around vulnerability, is that there's this big stigma around talking about like your mental health, right? Here's just some stats real quick. It's like a significant amount of people are going to like avoid seeking help when they feel like they need to because they feel like others will judge them. They also, a significant amount of people fear that that might cause them to lose their job, right? If they go to someone at work and be like, hey, I need support right now, I'm having a problem due to whatever reason, right? I mean, it literally could be genetics, right? It doesn't need to be like, oh, something major has happened in my life. I'm having a problem right now. If you tried to voice that at work, a third of people feel like if they voice that at work, that they would possibly lose their job, right? And then obviously our healthcare system. If those of you, I'm speaking from the United States, I think probably most of the audience is as well. But if you're not, the healthcare system here is kind of fucked to to say it in the right language. I think that's an appropriate use of an F bomb. Yeah, navigating that is also obviously a challenge. But that's why I like to, again, leading by vulnerability. The more that those of us that are comfortable or in positions where, I'm in a privileged position. I do not fear losing my job talking about this, right? I feel like, I feel like I'm someone that is in a position that that's okay. So I'm going to lean on that and show by example, like, hey, I'm going to talk about my struggles with my mental health and my journey and whatever things that I've had to go do, to hopefully A, help anyone around me feel like they're less alone, but B, give some other people the courage to do the same, right? Um, so yeah, you look at some other numbers here. 38% of people interviewed in this study feel anxiety or dread about going to work. Uh, and then I know that this is a pretty recent study. Uh, the decrease in workplace benefits. I know in the tech industry, we've like, it's kind of been a meme of how many benefits we get, right? Free lunch, free breakfast, blah, 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 blah. If you live in the Bay, things got crazy there for a while, right? Like people were getting rides to work covered and, you get a yoga studio in the office and all sorts of stuff that people that didn't live in the Bay Area just had no idea what was going on. And it almost kind of became a meme. And a lot of those things have started to peel away, right? You see a lot of layoffs. You also start to see a lot of these perks start to go away, right? I know myself, I've worked at a few different places that had mental health days. Like, hey, one Friday a month you had off, and it was labeled a mental health day, and that started to go away, right? I've seen every year that I've had health insurance as an adult, I think it's gotten more expensive and worse at the same time, right? It's like so. These things are crazy, right? So if you look even at the bottom, it says 30% of Gen Zers say they receive the mental health coverage that they need, right? So as they read another way, 70% of Gen Zers don't think that they're getting the proper coverage for their mental health, right? You can see some other stats. 77% of tech workers attributing deteriorating mental health to layoffs. 55% admit to escalating controlled substance abuse. This is stuff that's super prevalent in our industry. I think if you're listening and you're not one of these 55%, congrats, you won the coin toss. But if you look around, right, look, you don't even have to look to your left and right. That'd be a third, but 55%. Someone in your life, if it's not you, is definitely probably struggling with some sort of substance abuse related to trying to cope with some mental health issues. I would, if we were in person, I'd say raise your hand if you've heard of Tines. I'm a big poll the audience person when I give talks in person. So raise your hand if you know Tines. Tines is a cool company, like GreyNoise, right? They're kind of one of the newer cybersecurity companies that I really enjoy talking to and working with. And they did a voice of the SOC report, and it goes into a lot of the mental health aspects of the SOC, right? And so I really like this report. You should go check out the whole thing. But I wanted to pull just a few things out of here. 63% of practitioners in cybersecurity, and I think this was specifically SOC, but it might be all of cybersecurity. I can't remember right now. 63% experience some sort of burnout. That's shockingly low to me. Like 63% is a huge number, and I'm like, that's insane, right? It feels like everyone I've worked with at some point has been like, man, I'm dying this week, right? Like, or like, I have not taken a vacation in 18 months, like, because I can't, right? All that kind of stuff. It happens a lot. Job hopping, right? 55% say they're likely to switch jobs in the next year. People are just not feeling super supported at work. Obviously, Tines does some automation stuff. So they're going to talk about like, hey, manual aspects of the job are frustrating and automation's helpful. That's like, it's a Tines report. So of course, but there is some, I left this in here. It's a nugget of truth, right? A lot of what we do, I brought up bug bounty triage. Like a lot of like the lower level cybersecurity stuff is very like manual, tedious, thankless. Even we're going to talk thankless later, right? things that we get measured on in cybersecurity, how our employers measure our success are things that like are not will not get easier over time, right? It's not like we are improving things in our life, especially in a SOC, right? We are absolutely measured on, are you getting faster? Are you getting better? Are you available more hours of the night? How many people have heard of follow the sun models but didn't have proper people hired in other countries? So you were following the sun by eating into the sleep of your US teammates. I know I've worked in places that have definitely been on, like, I've been on call. I've been paged at 2 a.m. For sure, right? With a newborn at home, right? So like, these are things that we get measured on. Of, are we exceeding expectations? Exceeding, like, how many people have gotten measured like that in like a yearly performance review? Are you exceeding expectations? What does that mean when you hear exceeding expectations? To me, that means, were you here like later than everybody else? Did you answer on Slack at 10 p.m. when someone wrote you? Oh, okay, cool. That, I mean, it's almost expectations, but exceeding expectations, right? Number of incidents handled. Like, how many times have you put out a fire? Basically, right? Is and mean time to respond. It's just like, keep the workload high, keep it faster, get it done yesterday. These are not things that like lead to not burnout, right? Of course, people are burning out when you look at it like that. And then here's some common struggles, right? Like, again, I would poll the audience and raise hands. How many people have felt like they haven't had enough time to finish the job expectations that were set in front of them? How many people felt like they haven't had enough budget on their team to get what they were done? And this one shows lack of people down at 14%. I would say, if I was answering this question, lack of people and lack of budget are kind of the same thing, right? Like, hey, if we can't hire or get the right tools in place, like, we're overworked, right? So those are all kind of lumped in for me. Lack of skills, lack of buy-in from the rest of organization. This is hard, right? Like, this is what we learned about in security, is how to get the rest of the organization to buy in. That's not common, right? I just want to like let everyone know we work in an industry with problems that aren't common in other industries, right? It's not like lawyers have to convince the rest of the company that like lawyers are important, right? Like, this is a fair, not saying it's completely unique, but it's definitely not everywhere, right? So, like I said, we have a need for constant productivity. I certainly feel like I'm falling behind if I'm not plugged in, right? If I take a break from Twitter for a few days, I miss a 0 day, right? I miss something, that I miss a new technology that dropped. The last presentation was on AI. Sam, you were talking about like Llama 3. What is that? 48 hours old? 26 hours old? When did Llama 3 drop? Wait, what are the benchmarks? Do I know? Do I know the benchmarks of Llama 3 off the top of my head? I better. Someone's going to ask me about it in Slack. I don't want to look like an idiot, right? It's a day old. You're already talking about it on stage. It's wild. That's wild. This is not like, do you think cardiologists are like, hey, did you see that like new thing on Twitter yesterday, 26 hours ago? And if you don't, you're an idiot. Like, this, it's unique to our industry for sure. Not to say that cardiologists don't have a stressful job, but perfectionist culture, obviously you can't miss, right? I saw, did anyone see that Telegram vulnerability this week? It was like a remote code execution, quote unquote. It's questionable, but in Telegram, it was 2 letters switched, like PYWZ or PYZW. Like, it was like a typo of 2 letters switched caused a remote code execution vulnerability, right? Talk about perfectionist. And it's a high pressure industry, right? This is like, talk about seriously high pressure. I saw the Change Healthcare incident. Change Healthcare, if you guys don't know, owned by United Health. They suffered a ransomware attack a few weeks ago. They're going on $1 billion in incident response costs right now. $1 billion because of their security teams, dealing with a ransomware incident. How many people have heard these things? Congrats on not getting hacked today. You did it. I've never heard that. Wow, we were so secure this year. Thank you. I've never heard that either. But I have been in the headlines when I suffered an incident. I've been in national headlines when I didn't do good enough at my job, right? It's a national story. Not a national story when I do good at my job, right? My paycheck clears. Okay, I did good at my job. Again, this is unique to us. There are other industries like this, obviously, but like, I don't know, man. Like I'm trying to think of a metaphor, right? Firefighters, right? They put out you put out a fire, you get thanked for putting out that fire. That was your job, right? We don't get thanked for putting out the thousands of fires that we put out in a month, but we do absolutely get hammered when we miss one, right? Miss two. This is rough. Um, Cybersecurity. We worked from home before it was cool, right? We didn't work from home because of COVID. Hey Sam, do I have 30 or 40? Okay.
Yeah, so we've got about what 10 minutes left
I
or
just want
so,
to,
I
yeah,
think.
I just want
Yeah,
to do a time check. Yeah, I
yeah.
think I'm good. I just want to do a time check. Leave room for questions too. So we worked from home before it was cool, right? COVID made everyone work from home. I worked from home well before COVID. I don't know about everyone. Go Google some stuff. I didn't, again, I knew it was a short talk, so I didn't put a bunch of stats in here. There's a bunch of stats on the loneliness epidemic. The Surgeon General is talking about it. It's apparently as detrimental to your health to like experience severe loneliness as it is to smoke a pack a day, like in all cause mortality. Wild stats, right? Not only did we work from home before it was cool, we are an industry like predicated on like handling your own shit. Like, no, you don't talk to other people about what you do. You have NDAs. You can't talk about that cool thing that you did. Like, there's a lot of paranoia and loneliness just built into to the intricacies of cybersecurity. And now I'm hearing from the Surgeon General that loneliness is as bad as smoking pack a day. And I work in an industry that's like forced loneliness to a degree. We're going to talk about it. Layoffs, obviously, right? Like everyone here has experienced it in the last couple of years, I'm sure. If you not personally, someone on your team did, someone in your family did, it happens a lot in tech, right? We get these feasts and famines, right? It feels like money's raining from the sky for a few years, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, am I going to have a work tomorrow? What's this 15-minute meeting from HR that's on my calendar? It's wild, right? All right, I think I proved my point. It's an issue. It's an issue pretty unique to cybersecurity in a lot of ways. What can we do about it? Um, I hear a lot about mindfulness, and I included it in the title of this talk because I've had a few good experiences with this year, and I can talk more about my personal stuff outside of this talk. If anyone wants to talk, I'm an open book. You can hit me up on Twitter or whatever, and I can talk about some of my personal journey stuff. It's not what this is about today, but I've run into some mindfulness bit, and again, like if you read anything about mindfulness, it's like do everything that we don't do everything that we do for a living every day, right? It's like get off of technology and touch grass and like go do stuff with like your body outside. And it's like, what are you talking about? Twitter's inside. Like, Splunk is inside. I got eyes on the wall, right? So being good in cybersecurity and being mindfulness are at odds with each other. So I kind of came up with this like, hey, what about microdosing mindfulness? We can do it. We can work it into our daily life. We're going to talk about it. Daily stand up. You all have a daily stand up, or you've worked on a team with a daily stand up, I'm sure. I'm going to talk a little bit about doing a daily stand up with yourself, and then close the loop. I'm going to talk about stress and then engaging with the community. I just have a few minutes, so we're going to run through it real quick. So obviously we can't like all turn into monks and like be mindful in nature and stuff like this, right? But something that like someone challenged me this week is like just pause in the little moments and think about what you're doing and why, and be a little bit more intentional about everything that you're doing, right? So how many of you start your morning with a cup of coffee, right? I know I do. And I know a lot of times it's like slug it down, right? Or like, on the way to the next meeting, I'm grabbing Starbucks or whatever I'm doing. Um, if you could take these little moments, and I use the coffee as just an example, and just think about like what went into making that coffee. Like a plant literally grew, someone planted something, grew it, someone picked it, someone processed it, someone even that morning that you interacted with actually prepared that coffee for you. Just like think about that for a second before just like slugging it down and moving on to your next meeting. I know people like to like light candles and like create an atmosphere in their office that's a little bit more interesting. Do it with intention. Don't just be like, oh, I gotta light this candle, make myself feel better, or like put on this like aerosolizer or whatever it is. Think about what you're doing. What are you doing and why? Take a moment, breathe, and like think about it. This has really helped in my day to day. There's lots more examples besides the coffee, but I just wanted to say like, hey, try to. Obviously, you can't like do like complete meditation retreats all the time and stuff like this, but take these little moments and check in. Daily stand up. Check in with yourself. This is a daily stand up with yourself, right? I said, take the poll. When was the last time you checked in on yourself? When was the last time you checked in on some of your good friends or family, right? have you even like stopped to think, are you enjoying the ride? I have this quote literally hanging in my house. I have a picture of Anthony Bourdain and that quote, like it's like right on this wall. You can't see it. I absolutely love this quote. Um, he just talks about absolutely enjoying the ride. I think Bourdain had he had obviously a lot of his own mental health struggles, and I think that's what really uh, this hits home a lot for me because it's him and he had so many struggles. But he talks very specifically, eat slowly, tip your server, check in on your friends, check in on yourself, and enjoy the ride. Right. Absolutely love this. Stress. I could talk another 30 minutes about this. We live very stressful lives. I know how many of you right now are looking at the calendar for the rest of your day, even though it's a Friday and like you have a whole bunch of other Zooms you have to go through. I know I do, right? Um, I know one thing that's helped me because like there's only so much you can't breathe through stress. Like everyone's like, oh, do breath work, do yoga, do whatever. Yeah, but you have this pile of shit you got to get done that's like nagging at you and stressful. This is something that's really helped me. So I'm challenging you guys to do this. All those like little things through the week that like pile up. Like, oh, I got to make that appointment, or oh man, I got to call the bank. Oh, I got to run to the post office. Oh, I got to like follow up with that person. All this like non-work stuff, but just like things that you have to do. Try to find a good day of the week, right? Like Friday afternoon or whatever it is. Lids down, I call it, right? Close your laptop, get rid of everything else, and then just knock out as many of those little things that are just weighing you down all week that you can. This has really helped me. Like this feels like I just felt like I needed to share this because for some reason this worked so well with my brain that I thought maybe other like nerds like me, this would help. But like I would carry these things for weeks and it's like, oh man, it took me 48 seconds. Like, why did I carry this in the back of my head for weeks? These little tasks that pile up. This has helped. This has done more for my stress than any like breath work or yoga or anything like that has ever done. Right. It's like, forgive yourself for ignoring the little task when it pops up, because I know that I would like beat myself up like, oh man, I got to do that thing and I'm not doing it. Be like, oh, okay, no, it's cool. I don't have to do it right now. I got time to do that later in the week. But like, this has really, really, really helped me on stress stuff. And then community. Sam, I love what you're doing here. Um, Community is so important. I talked about the loneliness epidemic. This has been like integral for me, my life, my career, everything is just like making sure that I don't stay in my house all week, like, and just sit and like whatever. Yeah, this virtual stuff's great. Honestly, this is like really good, especially professionally. This is really good, but nothing like COVID hurt us in so many ways, but COVID really hurt us, and like we're super scared for a while there to like meet face to face with people. If you're not like immunocompromised and like you are kind of like able to, obviously I know it's like a privileged statement. I don't want to like lean into this too hard like some people, but like just please, for the love, get out and like sit at a coffee shop. Like I have some infosec people here, and I live in Austin, Texas. I have some infosec people here. I get coffee with a few of them like at least once a week. We get coffee, we bring our laptops if we're busy, whatever it is, but just like meet space. Like there's nothing like looking someone in the eye, giving someone a hug, like talking about whatever the heck you're doing. So please build a community around yourself. All right. I buzzed through it and just a few minutes for questions. Obviously each one of those things could be a much longer topic. I just kind of wanted to like introduce it, let you guys know you're not crazy, you're not alone. Like our industry is hard. Our industry is hard in unique ways, and there's not a whole lot of support like built up to face these unique things. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm working, follow Vulnerable You if you're interested in this stuff. Not like my shameless plug, but I put a lot of work into that every week on cybersecurity news, and I write a lot about mental health topics. And we're working on creating a community for mental health people in cyber or in tech around that whole thing. So if you're interested in that community, hopefully in the next few weeks, we're going to launch that. Just sign up for my newsletter and you'll see that. Cool. I went a mile a minute. I
Awesome.
didn't actually keep up on chat like I said I would. I have it up, but if anything came in, let me know.
Just a lot of positive comments, to be honest. People said you were cooking, and we got a lot of comments like that.
Let him
Both,
cook.
yeah, a lot of comments in the YouTube chat, and then also actually, positive comments on Discord as well. Um,
Cool.
I guess. We only have like a minute or two left, but I guess I was just kind of curious. How do you think you navigate this at a time at work when you're also seeing pushback from executives and venture capitalists, in where people are talking about like, don't bring this stuff to work, and there's also like a pushback against Gen Z, because people are saying that like Gen Zs like bring too much of themselves to work or whatever. So it's just kind of curious what your thoughts are on how to work with that, given everything that you just said.
Totally. And that's why I said I know I'm in a place of privilege, not fearing for my job, talking about this stuff, and I know that that's not everyone's story. So obviously, I'm not here to like prescribe what you should go do at your day job. Like you might work with a bunch of asshole like lawyer guys in suits that like don't want to fucking deal with your shit. Sorry, I just cuss a lot. I'm from New York. But if you can, if you feel safe, I know I'm part of leadership for an employee resource group called Ability, an ability resource group that talks about disabilities, both visible and invisible disabilities. If that is something that like your work offers, get involved. If it's not, maybe think about talking about starting an employee resource group for people with both physical or mental struggles, and what sort of support they might need in the workplace. Definitely, if you work in an environment that you can, lean into it. If you don't, then seek support elsewhere, please. Right? If for whatever reason you need to keep that job, you don't feel supported in that job, but like you can't like leave because of financial or whatever other reasons, like that's when I talk about build that community. Go figure it out, like whatever your support system is elsewhere. Right? Don't do nothing. Don't just like bottle it up, right? Like that's the boomer mentality of like, oh, shove it down, we're good. Like people admitting they would, like, you couldn't admit you went to therapy in the 80s and 90s, right? It's like,
Right.
what, you see a shrink, you're crazy. And now like we all are like trading therapist numbers because it's like, yeah, who's your therapist, right?
Right.
So yeah, be obviously I started with leading with vulnerability. Be as vulnerable as you can. It helps everyone around you, it helps yourself, but obviously assess your own situation on that.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate your time today. This has been a great talk. Definitely connect with Matt on all the socials. You're at Matt J on Twitter. Is that right? That's the
Yeah, and
handle.
then I think I
Yeah.
made a link tree for this kind of reason, right?
Cool.
I do a lot of short form videos on Instagram and TikTok, and then obviously my newsletters. I put a ton of this kind of content in the newsletter. So